All right, let's jump right in with a deep dive into Sun Pharma's latest quarterly results. We've got a great mix of sources here, their official financials, of course, but also a recording of their earnings call and even some of the questions analysts were prepping. So we're going to try to piece together the official story, but also maybe get a little peek behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see, the difference between what gets said in the polished reports
Yeah.
and then the kind of more off-the-cuff conversations that happen on those calls.
Exactly, exactly. So big picture first. Sun Pharma is a global player, a real pharmaceutical powerhouse, and their Q3 FY25 results, I think, show some pretty interesting trends. They pulled in a massive over 134,369 million in revenue, which is a jump of over 10% from last year. Pretty impressive given, all the global economic ups and downs we've been seeing.
Yeah, strong growth for sure. Just a quick note on that revenue number. Some of that comes from what they call milestone income. Basically, it's payments they get when they hit certain targets and partnerships, drug development partnerships. But even without that, they're still close to 9% growth. So really healthy, and I'm sure investors are happy about that dividend bump too, 10.50 per share.
Right, right, yeah. So growing overall. But I think what really pops out is their India business. They're on fire over there. Sales up almost 14%, hitting 43,040 million. Yeah, that's a great sign. Shows they're not just riding a wave of price hikes, but really gaining ground because people want their products. And get this, they're also #1 in prescription volume in India. So doctors clearly trust and are prescribing their medications. Now, switching gears a bit, the U.S. business, things are a little different, right?
Yeah, the U.S. is a whole other ballgame. Total sales actually dipped a bit year over year. They came in at U.S. $474 million.
Hmm.
Part of that is because the market for generics, which has been a core part of their business, well, it's shrinking in the U.S.
So how are they tackling that? I mean, if generics are becoming less profitable, what's the new strategy?
Well, they're definitely diversifying. One way is by going big on what are called specialty pharmaceuticals.
Hmm.
These are treatments for specific, often complex conditions. Higher price tags, less competition than generics.
Okay, and is that working?
Seems to be. Their global specialty sales are up, get this, 24.8% year over year. They hit U.S. $370 million.
Hmm.
So it's pretty clear that Sun Pharma is, serious about moving beyond just generics and building that portfolio of higher margin products that can, really fuel their growth.
Got it. So specialty drugs are a big part of the picture going forward. Any specific products we should keep an eye on?
Oh, yeah, they've got a few potential stars in the making. One is Illunia. It's a treatment for plaque psoriasis. That's a chronic skin condition. It's gaining traction both in the U.S. and globally because, well, it's proven to be effective and safe. Another one to watch is Winlevi. It's a topical acne treatment. Works a little differently than other acne meds and could really become a blockbuster for them.
Blockbuster meaning massive sales, right?
Yeah.
Now, along with these successes, it sounds like they're also dealing with some legal and regulatory stuff.
Ah, yes, the joys of the pharmaceutical industry, right?
Yeah.
Always some complexity there. So one example is this drug they've developed. It's called Leqvio, but everyone calls it Lexi. It's a potential treatment for alopecia areata. That's a condition that causes hair loss. They actually got FDA approval for Lexi, but they can't launch it. There's this patent lawsuit.
Oh, so another company saying, "Hey, we own the rights to something similar," and now it's a legal battle.
Exactly. The courts issued an injunction that basically prevents them from selling Lexi for now.
Yeah.
And the case is still ongoing. So even if they win, the earliest they could launch is like December 2026.
Yeah.
Patent timelines.
Well, that's a big setback. Makes you realize just how much is on the line for these companies when they're developing new drugs.
Absolutely. It's a long, expensive process.
Yeah.
And patent protection is crucial for them to recoup their investments and, keep innovating. But it also shows the downside. Sometimes it can delay patients getting access to new treatments, even if they've been deemed safe and effective.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation for sure. Now, on a more positive note, they've also got Semglee. That's their version of semaglutide, which I think everyone's been hearing about lately. It's being used for both diabetes and weight loss.
Yes, Semglee, that's a potential game changer. Sun Pharma has filed what's called a paraphrase for it in the U.S. Basically, that means they're asking for approval to market it for, a slightly different use, or maybe a slightly different formulation than the original semaglutide.
So they're trying to get their piece of this potentially massive market.
Exactly. And they may have even filed a paraphrase in Canada, too. The market's opening up there in 2026, so smart to get ahead of the game.
Makes sense. Makes sense. They're also working on another pretty promising drug, right? Something for pain and inflammation.
Yes, they picked this one up from a Canadian company. It's currently under what's called a clinical hold by the FDA, which basically means the trials have been paused while the FDA reviews some data and, make sure everything's safe.
So it's not a rejection, more like a temporary stop while they gather more info. What's so special about this drug?
Well, if it gets approved, it could be a huge alternative to those opioid-based painkillers, which, they work but carry a lot of risk, addiction, overdose. This one targets pain and inflammation in a completely different way, potentially much safer option.
Wow, that's huge, especially with, the opioid crisis and everything. Okay, so let's talk about Sun Pharma's financial health overall. It seems like they're in a pretty solid spot to deal with all these challenges.
Oh, yeah. They ended December with a net cash pile of US $3 billion. That gives them a lot of flexibility to invest in R&D, maybe do some acquisitions, and just generally weather any storms. They do have some challenges, though. There are some ongoing compliance issues at a few of their manufacturing facilities, which has, led to some scrutiny from the FDA.
Right, the FDA, the gatekeeper of drug approvals in the US.
Exactly. They're the ones who make sure all the pharmaceuticals are safe and up to, quality standards.
Mm.
And while these compliance issues mainly affect their U.S. generics business, it just shows how important it is to keep everything running smoothly across all their operations.
Makes sense, makes sense. So it sounds like a mixed bag for Sun Pharma. Strong growth in India, some really exciting stuff happening with specialty drugs, but also legal battles, regulatory hurdles, and that shrinking generics market in the U.S. It's like they're at a crossroads with both challenges and big opportunities ahead.
What stands out to you so far? Like, what's the biggest takeaway from this first look?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's this balancing act they're trying to pull off between their traditional strength in generics and this bold move into the world of specialty pharmaceuticals. It's risky, but if they play it right, it could be huge.
Totally agree. I think it'll be really interesting to see how they navigate all these complexities and what choices they make to, shape their future. We'll explore that more in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, we're back for part two of our deep dive into Sun Pharma's Q3 FY25 performance. Still lots to unpack here. We left off talking about this balancing act between generics and specialty drugs.
Yeah, like walking a tightrope. Got to
Mhm.
keep a foothold in generics while, building up that specialty portfolio.
It's like juggling two very different balls at the same time. So let's break it down. Their India business seems to be absolutely killing it. What's their secret sauce over there?
I think a big part of it is, they just get the India market. They've got this amazing distribution network, reach even the most remote areas, and they offer a really diverse range of products, common ailments to chronic conditions. Plus, they've built up a really strong reputation, both with patients and doctors.
So it's not just about the products themselves. It's also about getting them to the people who need them and building that trust with healthcare providers.
Exactly. And it's not just price hikes driving those sales. They're launching new products strategically, focusing on where there's a real need, expanding into those underserved markets.
Smart, smart. Sounds like they're playing the long game. Okay, so shifting gears to their global specialty business, that's where we're seeing some really impressive growth.
Oh, yeah. Sales are up almost 25% year over year. Specialty is clearly becoming, a major engine for their overall growth. What's interesting is they're really building a global portfolio, not just focused on one region, dermatology, ophthalmology, neurology.
All areas where there's a huge need for new and better treatments. And as we mentioned before, they've got some potential blockbusters in the pipeline.
Right, Illumya for psoriasis, Winlevi for acne, both gaining traction. Illumya, that's a biologic, so it's made from living cells, targets very specific pathways in the body, and it's been shown to be really effective for moderate to severe plaque psoriasis.
Okay, and Winlevi, how's that different from all the other acne treatments out there?
Works in a unique way. It targets a specific hormone receptor in the skin, which helps to reduce oil production and inflammation. So dermatologists seem to really like it. Could be a big moneymaker for Sun Pharma.
So they're not just copying existing drugs, they're actually developing innovative treatments for those unmet needs.
Absolutely. And they're not putting all their eggs in one basket. They're also seeing success with other specialty products like Sequa for dry eye disease and Odomzo for a type of skin cancer, basal cell carcinoma.
Okay, so a diverse portfolio targeting a whole range of conditions. But we can't forget about that legal battle they're in. Lexi, their potential treatment for alopecia areata.
Right, as we discussed earlier, they can't launch it in the U.S. right now. Patent infringement lawsuit,
Yeah.
still in appeal, so who knows when a decision will come down.
It's a shame because it could really help people with alopecia areata. That condition can really impact, people's lives.
I agree. It shows how complicated things can be. These legal battles can delay patients getting treatments, even when those treatments are, potentially life-changing.
Yeah, it's tough. Okay, so let's talk about their R&D pipeline for a bit. We know there have been some delays in clinical trials. Is there any more info on what's causing those delays?
They didn't get into specifics, but they mentioned things like finalizing protocols and getting those regulatory approvals for the trial sites. Seems like it's taking longer than they expected.
So more of a bureaucratic hurdle than a scientific setback?
Maybe. Could also be increased regulatory scrutiny, which, makes sense given patient safety, or even just, finding the right patients for the trials. That's a common problem in drug development.
Yeah, delays are never fun, but they happen. What matters is that they're, figuring things out and still investing in R&D. Speaking of which, that pain and inflammation drug they acquired, the one from the Canadian company.
Right, the one under the clinical hold. It's important to remember those are, pretty common in drug development.
So not necessarily a red flag.
No, not at all. It just means the FDA needs more info, or maybe they have some concerns before the trials can move forward. Could be anything, safety profile, dosage, manufacturing process.
So more like hitting the pause button, not canceling the whole thing.
Exactly. Sun Pharma will just need to work with the FDA, provide more data, maybe make some adjustments. Once the FDA is happy, the hold gets lifted, and they can, continue the trials.
Got it. And if it does get approved, this could be pretty big for them, right? Especially with everyone looking for those safer alternatives to opioids.
Absolutely. Could be a game changer, not just for Sun Pharma, but for patients dealing with chronic pain. It shows that even with all these legal and regulatory hurdles, there's still so much innovation happening. And that offers real hope for better treatments and a brighter future for healthcare.
Yeah, that's really encouraging. So I'm curious to hear more about how Sun Pharma is balancing these short-term pressures with their long-term goals.
Let's dive into that and more when we come back for the final part of our deep dive.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Sun Pharma's Q3 FY25 performance. We've covered a lot. Their strong performance in India, that big push into specialty pharmaceuticals.
And how they're navigating all those legal battles, regulatory hurdles, and of course the changing market for generics. But now let's look ahead. What are the big decisions, the potential disruptors that could really shape Sun Pharma's journey in the coming years?
That's the key question, isn't it? And one thing I keep thinking about is Semglee, their version of semaglutide. That drug's been getting a lot of attention lately for both diabetes and weight loss.
Yeah, semaglutide's definitely a hot topic. People are calling it a game changer in the fight against obesity, which is, as we know, a huge and growing problem worldwide. Sun Pharma getting into this market with Semglee, that could be a really, really smart move.
They've filed for a paraphrase in the U.S., maybe even Canada, so they're serious. But what are the potential hurdles they might face, especially for that weight loss indication?
Well, the weight loss market's already pretty crowded. Lots of medications, therapies out there. Sun Pharma's going to have to find a way to make Semglee stand out, not just on price, but, how well it works, safety, convenience for patients.
And of course, there's the whole regulatory process. Getting approval for a weight loss drug, that can be a long and complicated road.
Oh, absolutely. The FDA has really, really high standards for weight loss drugs. Okay. Want to see that it's safe, that it's effective. Sun Pharma will have to bring some strong clinical trial data to the table.
But if they can get through all that, the payoff could be massive. I mean, think about it. The global obesity epidemic, that's a huge market with a huge need.
Yeah, and it's not just about the money. Effective weight loss treatments, they can really improve people's lives, help them manage obesity and all the complications that come with it.
It's a win-win for sure. Okay, let's switch gears again. That other drug in their pipeline, the one for pain and inflammation, the one they got from that Canadian company.
The one under the clinical hold.
Yeah, that's the one. If it gets approved, this could be a a real game changer, right?
Hmm.
Especially with everyone looking for those safer alternatives to opioids.
Yeah, the potential is definitely there. Opioids are effective, but they come with so much risk. Addiction, overdose. This new drug could be a real breakthrough for people with chronic pain.
But, what does it actually mean that it's under a clinical hold? Is it a normal thing in drug development?
Yeah, actually, it's more common than you might think. It doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with the drug itself. It just means the FDA needs a little more information. Or maybe they have some concerns that need to be addressed before the trials can continue.
So, like, what kind of concerns?
Could be a lot of things. Questions about the safety profile, the dosage, maybe something to the manufacturing process,
Right.
or even the way the trials are designed.
So, like we were saying before, it's more of a pause, not a complete stop.
Right. Sun Pharma just needs to work with the FDA, provide more data, maybe make some changes. Once the FDA is satisfied, the hold gets lifted and the trials can pick up again.
Makes sense. It's good to know there are those safeguards in place to protect patients throughout this whole process. Okay, so let's zoom out a bit. Big picture. Sun Pharma is dealing with that shrinking generics market in the US, more competition from other drug makers,
Hmm.
and those ongoing regulatory challenges. How are they positioning themselves to navigate all of that?
It seems like they have this two-pronged strategy. On the one hand, they're defending their core generics business, focusing on efficiency, cost optimization, strategic partnerships.
So basically streamlining their operations to stay competitive in a market where the margins are getting thinner and thinner.
Exactly. But at the same time, they're really going all in on expanding that global specialty portfolio.
Right, that's the big bet for the future, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Investing in those innovative specialty products, higher profit margins, less competition.
Exactly. Classic example of a company trying to balance, protecting their existing business while also looking for new growth opportunities. Not easy to do.
Like walking a tightrope. Got to make sure you don't fall off on either side.
It's a delicate balance, but so far they seem to be doing pretty well.
Yeah.
And they have a few things going for them. Strong track record in manufacturing and distribution. They know how to navigate the regulatory processes.
Yeah.
And they have a healthy cash balance,
Yeah.
which gives them the flexibility to invest strategically.
Yeah, those are definitely valuable assets, especially in such a competitive industry. And it sounds like they're not afraid to take some risks, whether it's pursuing new uses for existing drugs like Semglee,
Hmm.
or developing those completely new therapies like that pain and inflammation drug.
That willingness to innovate, to
Yeah.
push the boundaries, that's going to be crucial for them in the long run. This industry is constantly changing. The companies that can adapt, that can stay ahead of the curve, those are the ones that are going to succeed.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into Sun Pharma's world. Really gives you a sense of just how complex and dynamic this company is. As we wrap up, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away?
I think the biggest takeaway is that Sun Pharma is a company in transition. They're moving from being mainly focused on generics to embracing both generics and specialty pharmaceuticals. They face challenges, sure, but they're also grabbing those opportunities and showing a real commitment to innovation.
Sounds like their future is full of possibilities, but it's also going to be a challenging journey. What do you think?
And that-
Could Sun Pharma go from, you know, a generics giant to a leading global innovator?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Only time will
Yeah.
tell. But they certainly have the potential, the resources, the drive to make it happen.
Well, that's a wrap on our deep dive into Sun Pharma. Hope this has given you a better understanding of this fascinating company.
And maybe even sparked your curiosity to learn more about the pharmaceutical industry and all the forces that are shaping its future.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.